we are going to do an update on Hercules under saddle. And what I've been doing so far in this ride is just a quick warm-up. We've been working about 15 minutes to the right, which even though Hercules still struggles to find that internal straightness and really untwist the spine, going to the right has recently been his easier direction. And the changes I'm looking for in the warm-up are just that he lengthen his neck and kind of voluntarily give me a tiny bit more forward. It's not going to be a lot. We're still building his capacity for going forward. And part of that is really getting that chronic twist and bend, which is to the left, out of his habitual coordination. And it's been a slow process for Hercules. We've had to work on some hindquarter engagement and then back to untwisting, and then a little more hindquarter engagement, and then back to untwisting, and we've been going back and forth. So it takes about 15 minutes for Hercs just to kind of gently get things organized to this point where he lengthens his neck, he stays forward, and he even maybe gets out of that feeling of going forward with the handbrake on. Like he just barely shifts into what we would maybe call first gear, but that voluntary impulse for him to increase the forward energy is the result of changing the spinal coordination, the skeletal coordination, and him feeling more comfortable during motion. So this is kind of what we've been doing, is a warm-up to the right, just to the point that he kind of gets here. Not super fancy, but a distinct change in his coordination and posture. And then we've been spending more time going on the harder direction, and like I showed with Lexi, sort of targeting his specific issue and just giving him more time to work through the problem. So when we go to the left, you see he instantly, instantly sort of slows down, shortens the neck. His left twist has always caused him to lock both front legs, trying to stabilize through his neck and shoulders. And it started because he had a pain issue on the right hind. So it sort of set up this habitual left twist. And because the pain issue, it was an OCD lesion, was significant, even though it was intermittent. And it went on for a few years before it was diagnosed and treated. So that habit in his movement really took hold and has been a hard one to change. And because he seems to be having an easier time going to the right, he shows me signs like lengthening his neck, offering a little bit more forward. Those are the signs that he's getting more comfortable. And each direction is a significant sort of change in, not a change in coordination, but sort of the perception of coordination. We're all a bit one-sided, right-handed or left-handed. And we could say Hercules is severely left-handed. So going to the left, you would think that would be the easier direction, but that's where he loses control over his body weight, and then he stiffens his whole right side because his skeleton and his body weight are too far left. So warming him up to the right, he shows me it's a little more comfortable, a little easier. So we started riding most of the time to the left so that I can give the aids, give a little guidance, but have more steps, more time for him to explore, work out the tight spots, make some changes, and start to at least get the left and right directions equal, if not fantastic, at least equal. So you can see as soon as I start tracking left, I have his nose a little bit to the outside, which is actually putting his neck in line with his back, right? But he tightens that neck. He shortens it, he tightens it. He also shows signs of struggle by just being a little more distracted, a little bit slower, maybe halting more often, that kind of thing. And he's comfortable enough that his, sort of resistance or trying to get out of the changes are not as extreme, but they're still there. Him telling me this is a bit difficult for him in this direction. So because it's a straightness issue, and by straightness what I mean is the ideal alignment of the spine from the pole to the tail and back is not geometrically straight mechanically, but it does, in the correct alignment of vertebra to vertebra, it does create a sensation of a straight line of force through the midline. His always feels like it's bent to the left, and that goes hand in hand with the twisting motion or rotation, which is also twisting that way. So he holds his torso a little bit like that. And that's why going to the left direction, he has to tighten all the muscles on the right side pretty extensively, because his skeleton is sort of twisted and bent to the left, and that's what sends his body weight too far forward. So that impulse to lengthen the neck is telling me we're getting that bend and that twist straightened out a little bit. So the result of those two spinal functions working together, when the twisting is reduced and the spinous processes begin to remain upright, and the alignment of the spine is such that it generates kind of a stable, straight feeling through the midline, as soon as the spine is achieving that mechanical coordination, the muscles through the neck, through the back, through the top line, all the way to the tail, immediately release a shortening contraction and restore some suppleness, some length. So the final piece of what's happening back to front or from the center outward is his voluntary, spontaneous choice to lengthen the neck. I'm feeling what he's doing under the saddle, and I'm using my body weight and my aids to sort of discourage the imbalance, and then letting him choose his speed, letting him explore with his head and neck use, so that he can figure out how to get more comfortable by reducing that habitual twist and that habitual bend. And it's not even something we can see visually, but it's definitely something we can feel. And you may see how often he pitches me to the left, despite my best efforts, or how I have to sit slightly to the right in the saddle. That's because in order to keep my body weight and my body vertical, my body weight in the right place, the force of his muscle contraction through the right side of his back is so strong, I have to actually sort of straddle the right bar of the saddle, the right bar of the tree of the saddle. So I'm a little bit off center, because that helps me not tense and stay relaxed with my body weight in the right place, sort of sitting against the tight muscles that he's using as compensation. That leaves him a little room on the left to explore shifting his own weight, placing his leg, left front leg, a little differently, staying balanced on his right hind leg, even though we're going left, which is part of that. And I'm just gonna see, I figured I would do, I don't know, maybe a 20-minute video, and we'll just see how far he gets. He's been making little positive changes by taking this strategy of just warming him up to the right on the easier direction and not doing anything different, but giving him more time to work through the challenges and the old habits to the left, where he's struggling a bit more. And I'm targeting the problem he has by being on a bigger circle instead of a smaller circle, because engagement is, if they can maintain a minimal degree of engagement on a straighter path of travel, then gaining the straightness internally with those two spinal functions, that's easier for the horse to figure out or find the straighter the path of travel is. The circles are only useful to encourage a deeper placement of the hind legs, which helps with engagement, but it really challenges any straightness issue. So where Lexi and Rafalco, their biggest challenge is really keeping the hindquarters engaged and stable. They have straightness issues, but they're just not as significant. The bigger challenge for both of those horses is maintaining engagement and stability through the hindquarter so that they can lift the back. With Hercules, what hinders him from lifting the back more, he can engage just enough that he can control his body weight from falling forward a little better than those guys can. But his twist and his lateral bend are so significant that lifting the back, which theoretically should straighten the twist and the bend, is so difficult for him because of the muscle, sort of habitual muscle use, where he's really tight because the muscles are going to support the primary coordination of the skeleton. So with him, all of his muscles are set up to sort of support that left roll of the barrel. And he's very strong on the right side of his body. He's a little weaker on the left side of his body. And so as we start changing that, we may get some shoulder clunks or some spontaneous changes and chiropractic type adjustments. But most importantly, we want to release the excessive shortening, over-contracting of all the muscles on the right side. And that's part of how we know we changed the skeletal coordination. So all this bit of distraction, the lengthening of the neck, it comes for a few strides, and then he quickly loses it. There, he's starting to hold it. And I'm hitting roughly between 10 and 15 minutes, which is really good, because if he can find more strides with his neck lengthening, again, voluntarily, and when he starts to offer me a little bit more forward energy, those are the signs I'm looking for to know that we've made the changes we were trying to gain. That's pretty good. That's kind of what I'm looking for. And then I can feel his left front shoulder moving a little bit more. Instead of feeling sort of stuck into the side of his body, I can feel when that left front leg starts to gently reach forward and increase the range of motion, which means he has less weight on it. He's starting to control his own internal body weight a little bit better. And this has been a huge challenge for this horse. I even suspect before he came to me that he was bitted, where they tie the head around, because he really wouldn't go right at all. And he can take a severe amount of pressure and leverage. He's one tough guy. But I think they tied his head to the right in order to supple him. And all that did was make this spinal coordination a whole lot more complicated and sort of almost harder to change, because he was avoiding a pain issue. Yep, there go the neighbors. So we'll just see what he can accomplish with a little extra time this direction. But I'm pretty pleased that I feel him changing. I feel things shifting around. He does that once in a while as the twist starts to come back upright. then he loses it. There's his old habit. And whether the distraction created the imbalance or the imbalance made him look around, don't know, don't care. But it's kind of hard for him to get his balance unless his mind is in the game. So the distraction can be a way to sort of avoid making the changes. It can also be a sign that he feels a little insecure about making the changes. So I just keep going. I don't force any one correction. I just keep resisting the forces that are related to the twist and the bend. And I keep encouraging a straighter midline, a more level back with my seat, with my reins, with my legs. And only if he stops, then I apply the leg aid for forward, or maybe give a light tap with the whip. As long as he's moving, I let him choose his speed, like there where he stops, my legs come on a little. I didn't even need to tap with the whip. So it's very slow, but that's always what happens when we're changing coordination. People and horses. It's like we can't just instantly change coordination and maintain the same, what we want to say, this, if the way we do things is because of how we coordinate internally. So when we're monkeying around with internal coordination, it changes how we do things, right? So giving the horse a little space for slowing down, speeding up, he's really following my seat to stay on this path of travel. I'm mostly having to use the reins to prevent a left bend through the neck. And even though the head looks like it's a little bit to the outside, it's in line with my seat bones or slightly tipped to the outside as a way to help him not dump all his weight on that left front leg. So I try to keep any outside bend pretty minimal, but that's what I'm mostly doing with the reins, is either steering a little bit or resisting a left bend a little bit or actively tipping his nose a little bit to the outside, just so he doesn't landslide with his body weight the way his habit tells him to, which is forward onto the left front. So we'll just do a few more minutes, but I'm pretty pleased that he's starting to want to lengthen the neck. It's still a bit of a lumpy ride. It's not smooth yet, and not as smooth, even though he's not super either direction. The difference between the directions tells us about the internal coordination, how they're using the spine. So getting each direction smooth and easy and equal is what I need before I can go farther and improve the balance. I can't leave one side behind or one direction behind, because that's not going to work when I go to lift the back. I'm going to have tight muscles restricting the lift or restricting more engagement, or he's going to resist forward because it's not comfortable. That's better. That's him finding what I'm looking for. It only lasts a stride here and there, but he's sort of showing a bit of the process. And it comes and goes. And the body keeps changing and adapting as I resist the imbalance and give him some space to figure out his balance. And there's a nice deep breath, which means he's finally feeling a little bit of relief from the change of coordination that I'm guiding him to between my aids and my body use. That's the posture I want him to choose. And then when he really feels comfortable and stable, he'll also pick up the speed just a little. That's going to be gradual for him. It doesn't come all at once. But any little feeling of the energy flowing forward, instead of kind of feeling like it's always falling out the left, the right, or pushing backwards, that is the result of getting the coordination of the skeleton pretty, at least correct enough that they feel the relief from it. So I'm definitely now starting to get the posture change a little quicker, and it's lasting for more strides. But I think for the next several rides, I'll stick with this plan of doing a short warm-up to the right on what is currently, although that always changes, currently the easier direction for him is to the right. And then we'll spend our hot summer months kind of walking to the left, trying to work through these last old habits that are still kind of hindering his trot, his lift, his collection, his canter, all of that. This is kind of what's in the way of being able to develop further. So I think we'll leave it there, and then I'm going to keep riding him, but that's kind of what it looks like until both the left and the right are more equal.